Are you a farmer or butcher ready to master direct-to-consumer marketing and meat success? Then you're in the right place. I'm Jared Aachen, the founder of ChopLocal. Each episode of this podcast features interviews with farmers and butchers who have built successful direct-to-consumer meat businesses, and they're going to share their secrets for success with you. From actionable tips to inspiring stories, this podcast has ingredients you will need to succeed in the meat business. After the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on social. And check out the rest of our educational resources at ChopLocalUniversity.com. Now, let's turn it over to my business partner, Katie, to get started.
Welcome to another episode of Meat Success, the ChopLocal University podcast. I'm Katie Olthoff, the co-founder of ChopLocal and ChopLocal University. And today I am here with one of our ChopLocal vendors, Ryan Studnicka from Studnicka Cattle Co. He is in Wisconsin, so southwest Wisconsin, not too far from Iowa, kind of in the driftless region. And Ryan is a little bit unique in this region of the Midwest in that he is raising grass-finished cattle. So Ryan, tell us a little bit about how you got into this cattle business and selling direct to consumer.
I was fortunate enough to grow up on a 5-generation family farm. We settled into southwest Wisconsin, Muscoda, Wisconsin in the 1870s. The staple of our bread and butter for our farm has always been dairy. And then we had other segments of beef, sheep, hogs, horses at times for doing, that sort of thing too. Once we sold out of the dairy, it would have been 2004 we sold out the dairy, and then we sold my original family farm in 2012. And so that's kind of a transition from the dairy to the beef. At the time I was graduating college, obviously heart broke over the family farm selling, but kind of wondering as my dad embarked on his portion of the farm that he kept, how we were going to be sustainable for the future. I didn't have a herd of my own at the time, but in 2014, I had purchased a local herd, and I had been leasing some property and doing kind of more things, continuous grazing, doing the cow-calf operation and selling the calves, kind of dabbled into selling some show steers once in a while. And just kind of analyzed that, how it's going, or breeding stock. And just finally, I bought my own farm in 2018. And that's kind of when everything expedited to the rotational grazing. I also worked off farm with the cheese company called Meister Cheese. And we had a pasture access program. I worked with a lot of dairy producers that did rotational grazing, just kind of being intrigued on what they're doing. Seeing the before and after results on their farms, I was just, hey, I want to try these things. So just, gleaned a lot of information from the producers I worked with that program on my day job, and then applied it to my beef herd once I had gotten my farm. And it started with the first year, I only had 4 paddocks. And now this upcoming year, I'll have 45 different paddocks. We just completed a transition we had 60 acres of crop and 60 acres of pasture. So the crop, we converted it all to pasture this past year in 2024. And so now, we have water lines and all those other things. So we really jumped in with both feet after seeing the progress that we've made since 2018, not only on the land and the cattle and just the numbers at the end of the day, and then now our customers with what the demand is for our product. Is why we jumped in with both feet with converting the last bit of our cropland to pasture.
That is amazing. I've worked with a lot of cattle producers over the last few years, but I don't know that I know of any that have that. So you have 120 acres of pasture now. And how many paddocks again?
We'll have 45 this year. So
45 paddocks. And how many head of cattle are you running then? Or how many pairs or...
Well, right now is our seasonal low. So we have 2/3 of our cows are calving in the spring, and then the remainder in the fall. So right now we have 50 head between finishers and calving. And so we'll have 25 calving this spring, and then we'll have another 15 calving in the fall. And then we've kept back some heifers too to grow the herd to maximize the new amount of pasture. So
Okay, so each paddock is roughly 3 acres-ish, 2.5. So how often do you move your cattle from one paddock to the next?
when you're pasture based, you don't want to have a cookie cutter approach. I mean, you have a great idea going into it, but then the season presents its own challenges. So sometimes maybe the grass is greener, or you get an early spring, sometimes it's later, but predominantly our pastures, if I'm looking at the average of our size, we're looking at the average of about, just looking here, would be about 2.5 to 3.5 acres. Some of the 3.5 acres, they'll be more like, they have a patch of woods or a little pond or something of that nature. So it's just like we look at the usability of 2.5 acres. And for the number of stock, when you have the calves on them during the summertime, when we're ballooning up to more like 65 to 75, maybe 80 total head on the pasture, it gets us in a perfect rotation that each paddock is a day for the duration. So, and generally how it starts is we won't start with 45 paddocks. We'll actually start with closer to 20 paddocks and not graze it. They'll have like closer to 5 acres to graze. So, as in the springtime, it's coming up, we're not damaging that plant and it can regrow quickly. Well, then by the time we go around the second pass, then we're cutting the paddocks in half. And it depends on the timing on that, but it gets to a point where we can almost have them on the paddock then for 2 days instead of one. And so it's just like an art of reading the pasture and not trying to go below 6 inches of growth, so then it'll grow back faster. I always tell an analogy of, hey, if you mow your lawn, like continuous versus rotational grazing or intense rotation grazing, if you're mowing your lawn every day, your lawn is probably going to be brown, or it's never going to grow quickly. Well, it seems like if you wait 2 weeks, it grows up, then all of a sudden it just blows up. So it's like we try to shoot for at least 30 days of rest, and that's between each paddock visit. In the past we were down to only like 10 to 14 days when we had half the number of pasture acres, but we really found a lot more mass and vegetation to consume for the cows when you're getting closer to the 30 days, and it's mimicking more on like hay cutting too. So that's when your crops are bested.
So I'm going to try to explain this, and you can tell me if I'm explaining it wrong. And I'm sure there will be some people listening that are like, Katie, kind of, but not really. And there will be other people listening that are like, okay, I'd never heard that, and that kind of makes sense. But from my understanding, with your pasture growth, if this is ground level, I'm sorry for those of you listening and not watching on YouTube, but I'm got some talking with my hands here. But if we've got ground level, we've got the stuff above ground that the cattle are grazing, or sheep, or whatever it may be. And then you've got the root matter underground, right? And if you allow your cattle to stay in that paddock and keep grazing that down really, really low, the roots are also actually going to shrink up to kind of match whatever is above ground. Am I kind of right on that?
You're correct. And I think one other thing would be the going off of that too. And what I've gathered from all the people I've worked with between my day job and then just there's a company called, or a state organization called Grassworks in Wisconsin. They had a conference every year, and there's we're fortunate in Wisconsin. There's a lot of opportunity for pasture walks and things of that nature that people are helping out one another, and you get to learn a lot. But what I'd say too is, when you're getting that first 3 inches, it's there, and it's something that cattle always consume. You see on the countryside more so like in July and August, everything's kind of grazed down. But the value of the plant is when it's more so in that 6 to 12 inches range or more so, and you're going to have a better intake matter, the protein and your starches and everything. Another thing we found, and again gleaning from other people, is we do our rotations in the evening. So that's when the starch is the strongest in the sugar in the plant. So that's when we're going to do the rotations, and we've noticed it just makes for happy cows. You rotate them, they're ready to be rotated, they're at the end of the gate, and you just open the gate. I always kid people, I don't chase my cattle, they chase me.
You open the gate and they know exactly what to do. They're ready for it, right?
Yeah, they hear the ranger and with my dog or my family, and they're like, oh, we're going to the other end of the pasture. We know where to go. And they're like, in instance, like dairy cows going to the old stanchion barn and they know their stall. It's the same thing with the paddocks. They got it figured out. At the end of the day, we're the next, where we're going upriver or downriver or in the interior. They just know. And yeah, it's a thing of beauty to watch. So yeah, that the evening time is the best time.
So it's not only from a soil health and forage production standpoint, because if that root system shrinks up, if you graze it down too low and that root system shrinks up, it takes longer for that plant to then recover because it has to regrow its root system in order to support the above ground growth, right?
Another thing I didn't think of earlier is that, kind of a misconception. I mean, it is true, but people are worried that, hey, if you turn them out and you got like 2 foot of grass in there, and they're like, well, all that wasted feed. Well, actually, there's two things happening when they're trampling, whatever 20% of the plant, but that's also making like a floor on the soil. So your ground temperature is going to be a lower temperature. It's not going to be as susceptible to dry out in a drought. Also it's gonna, the plant, when it has a chance to head out, you're gonna have reseeding, so you're gonna have a thicker strand of pasture when you come through. That's another biggest thing. Like if you look at, our pastures on an aerial, it's just like symbolic of like neighbors in a suburb area. If this guy mowed the lawn on day one, next guy on day two, it's a beautiful thing to like drive through with the ranger to see that, or for horseback changing the cattle. And I think that's where the proof in the pudding, like when you do a pasture walk at somebody that's doing this, it makes it much more evident of the why for intense rotational grazing. And
So it's great for the soil health. It's great for regrowing plant matter. And so if you are even in a drought area or you don't have great conditions, by not grazing it down all the way, you're going to end up with more forage throughout the year, even if you are trampling some of it, right? But then you were also talking about the value of the plant in beef production. So you said that top 6 to 12 inches is more valuable for creating great beef. Am I understanding that correct?
yeah, so like the rate of gain, what we find like in, we're just doing grass fed only, we're supplementing with salt and some basic minerals, but we're seeing more like 2.5 to 3.5 rate of gain on the pounds on our feeders that we do sell some this last year with the current market.
That's on your grass finished, right? And that's comparable to some grain finished operations.
Yeah, we have grass fed all the way through. So the calf is born, they're following the mom. In some years that we'd keep like the heifers or finishers in a different like series of paddocks, but we basically just tie everything in one big paddock now. And that's the best how we management wise it's just less labor that way. And then we don't have when we seeded down the 60 acres, we seeded all in one multi-species mix. So that's it just works out the best. We see the rate of gain in the calves and in the cows, and obviously you're feeding your higher quality hay in the wintertime to your finishers and wean calves.
So what breed of cattle are you running?
So we started out with a Seminole Angus Hereford cross as like a three-way, and then we've alternated between Angus bulls and Hereford bulls. So we got mainly black baldies, and then now we're kind of getting into where we have a split herd where we just got introduced 10 registered Angus cows or heifers, and then the rest are baldies. So we are going to cater to that, certified Angus market too.
Gotcha. I'm partial to Herefords. We have mini Herefords on our farm. We only have 2 acres fenced in, and I do make my husband rotate, but not as often as I think that he should. But then again, I'm not the one out there, you know what I mean, doing it.
It's tedious every single day, so it definitely. I'm thankful I have my wife. She had a farming background, so it's nice to alternate when or we do it together. But yeah, it is a tedious and ongoing endeavor during the summer.
Well, we've got 1 acre on one side of the house and 1 acre on the other side of the house. So they have to go across, I mean, they'd have to go across the yard. And then when it's time to calve, he's got some working facility. Like one side has a shed with one side open, that they can get some shelter in the winter. We like to calve in there, bring them in if we need to, and that type of thing. And then he's got his working chute set up in there. I really want to keep him over here when we're calving and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, but the grass is over there. Let's go. So we're always back and forth about it. But it's been a few years ago now, but we bought 4 heifers and introduced them to the farm. We did not have a cow that knew what was going on. And the first time we tried to move them across the yard, they had no clue what to do. Now it's like you said, we open the gate and they just know exactly where to go. And so it's not nearly as big of a deal. But that first year or two, and same calving heifers was very stressful the first couple years too. But yeah, I love those Baldies, love the Herefords, and obviously Angus are just so popular around here. And then Simmental, if you got some of that mixed in, frame size and yields are great on Simmental. Isn't that kind of correct?
Yeah, that is. We are a little unique in that, with the grass fed, that we shoot for a smaller frame cow. So our cow's max is like 1350, 1400 with, most of our finishers topping out in the 1200 to 1250 area. And generally, people ask, well, it takes longer. Yet, yes, it does. I would say on the short end, it'd be 24 months. But the most ideal ones we've seen on the finish and yield and stuff like that is more on the 28 to 32 months.
That's what I wondered. Okay. Interesting. So then are you cutting hay? I mean, with all the dairy around you and stuff, you said probably some high quality hay that you have access to, but are you cutting hay yourself too, or are you buying that in most of the time?
Yeah, my dad, he actually still with him he has some beef cattle too. He did some custom haying in the years past, and now he just focuses on, our 2 herds. So he's a big help to our operation. But like last year with just transitioning, we had abundance of hay with just working our cow numbers up, with getting from 60 acres to 120 acres. So we took off like the first 2 crops, and then it was actually new seeding, so we were able to do 2 passes around the new 65 acres. So that's kind of what we do, and we're just with tracking the amount of feed that we're feeding, we're able to now be sustainable. We'll probably be still net selling. If we do the 2 crops again next year, we'll be selling hay more than what our needs are with just taking 2 crops off. And so kind of going back to the rotation thing, we'll rotate we have a river on the backside of our property, and then we have water lines now. So, you'll take the cows down by the river. They go, from the upper part to the down, and then we rotate them back up. So if they basically go to where they went before with opening all the gateways, we'll do that for probably 2 passes, and then that'd be about second crop would be done, and then we'd go a third and fourth pass through all the acres then, and then see where we're at come fall.
Through the hay acres as well, then?
Yep. So they'll be part of the rotational. We'll add in split paddocks, which we did at the end of the year.
So what is your beef like? How does it compare to conventional grain finished Angus beef, I guess?
I would say to people that haven't had grass fed before, I would compare. I used to be a big time elk hunter or go out west. I won't say I'm a big time elk hunter because I never got one, but my buddy always got one. So I'm a professional elk camper going out for hunting trips, for camping trips. But anyway, what I always compare it to is elk. So like, people love venison, and it's got a rich, distinguished taste. Where like with beef, no disrespect to any conventional beef or regular beef, it's kind of like you get the consistency, and kudos to all of our producers out there across the U.S. that you get a consistent taste of beef. But I would say more with ours, you get more of a pronounced rich taste. And, obviously everybody's palate is different, but we found that people that have gotten more than, let's just say, a 10 or 7 or 8 pound bundle, they're the guys that are always repeat. Like, a guy will get 1 or 2 pieces. It's like, if they have a couple meals from us, generally they're hooked, and we have a very strong repeat customer base. So
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen that come through your Chop Local store as well with those repeat customers. So is it marbled or not very much? Is it leaner?
yeah, I would pull up a picture, but obviously we're on a podcast. But yeah, a lot of people say, oh, you can't get intermuscular fat or marbling. Yes, is there not the amount of tallow on the outer portion of the animal? I won't dispute that. That is true. But I'll say my inner muscular fat on your steak that you're eating at a restaurant or anything, I'd put it up against anybody.
And part of that has to do with that. I mean, your grazing techniques, right? You said getting that higher protein value in the top of the plant is what you said.
Yeah, I mean it's just like it's just like making quality alfalfa or any type of forage crop. Obviously when it heads out, the value of the feed value goes down, and so or when you're harvesting it in most cases on forage too early, it has a lesser forage value too. So it's just like having the cattle consume that at the peak value. But going back to the value of or the intermuscular fat and stuff of that nature, I think it's more just giving the animal, if you look at a bison out in the wild or an animal, when they're like, hey, that's look like that animal's ready to be butchered or finished. It's more of the timing aspect that grass fed with not being confined, it's going to take longer, and you're not pushing the number of calories on them. So when I'm holding off to the 28 to 32 months or more, the average is more when you're going to get the intermuscular fat to the age of the animal.
So being in the Midwest where there are a lot of Angus grain finished cattle in our area, do you feel like being grass finished has been a benefit to you in your direct to consumer marketing? Or do you feel like it was kind of a hard push to get people around you to understand why this might be desirable for them?
I would say when I started, you know, getting licensed and processing and selling by the cut, it was just out of my garage in 2020. I would say it was very hard on the grass fed aspect, saying grass fed. It wasn't just saying grass fed is, hey, you ever give them grape? No, no, we don't. And so, people were, well, how do you finish them? So I would say being from a rural area, that was a little bit harder because, it's price conscious. And then there's, in the more urban setting, people, they're more caring about where their food comes from and all that sort of thing. But I do notice in the last few years that the more the grass-fed movement is getting mentioned more, and people that maybe they have grain at one portion or another of its life, but now they're mentioning, hey, this is grass-fed. It's kind of more of a marketing term. And yeah, I would say it's people are seeking it out now. They're like wondering, hey, how authentic of a grass fed are you, and that sort of thing. So I think once they kind of know the gamut of thing, or we always invite people to come out to our farm, just look at it, because it's literally when you're picking up meat at our garage, you're seeing the field, you're seeing the paddocks, you're seeing the cattle. So it kind of sells itself there.
There seems to be this myth that there's no regulations around using the term grass fed, grass finished, but there are rules for grass finished. And I always use the term grass fed, grass finished together because I feel like there are producers who call their meat grass fed and then in parentheses or with an asterisk or somewhere, grain finished. We know that most cows spend most of their lives on grass. We know that the calves spend most of their lives on grass, and a lot of them are just finished on grain at the very end. But yeah, to say grass fed, grass finished, never given any grain, we feel really strongly at Chop Local that we're not going to allow that type of marketing. Well, we don't allow disparaging marketing, but we also don't allow misleading marketing. So I appreciate that yours really is grass fed, grass finished, and we're not using that term as just, a marketing ploy. So,
Yeah, and there's another thing too. I would say it helps with our taste too, but on as far as the grass fed goes, so we had to go through a certification through the state and federal to get a FS SIS, grass-fed label, so they has grass-fed in all of our individual cuts. And then our animals, normally you bring your animals to the butcher plant the evening before, but our butcher graciously allows us to bring it the morning of. But the caveat is we got to make sure we get our butts up because we have to be the first animal to butcher because they treat it just similar to organic, where the state auditor does not allow me to get the label unless my animal is first and not, I don't want to say contaminated, but it's you have to start that way. And so that's one of the other stimulations we have to do with maintaining compliance.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting. But yeah, I appreciate that you go the extra mile to do those things and have that grass finished, the label grass fed that way. So every spring and fall, we host a webinar series, free educational events for farmers and butcher shops that are selling direct to consumer. Sydney, tell us a little bit about our spring 2025 webinar series that we have planned.
Yeah, so first of all, we are going to start with Stephen Ussery of Stewards Unlimited. He talks about the USDA Business Builder Grants. And before I go any further, I guess I should say you can always find these recordings on our YouTube. And by the time this is published, a few of our 2025 webinars may have already been uploaded there. But then after Stephen's webinar in February, we will be talking about how to get people to buy from your online store. I feel like that's a huge conversation we have with our farms, but also tons of just, farms and butcher shops we talk to across the country. Like, I have this online store, but everybody just keeps texting me or saying they want to meet in person or whatever it is. And so we're going to talk about lots of different strategies to get people to actually use your online store so that you're not having to field all those calls and messages and Facebook comments or whatever it may be. And then in March, we are actually going to be having Sierra, our marketing specialist. I feel like we've mentioned her. Sierra will be talking about social media strategies. And so I know we've kind of talked about social media in the past on webinars, but she's going to take a little bit different of an approach. She's really good at Reels, so I know we're going to have her talk about that, but just some other strategies that she sees success with. So I know that one will definitely be popular. And then our last webinar of the season will be about how to turn your farmers market customers into year-round customers. We feel like that's a good timing. I know a lot of our vendors are starting to think about farmers market season in that April timeframe. And so we're going to walk through some methods to kind of convert those customers into purchasing from you year round. So we're really excited about this lineup of webinars. We definitely think they're going to provide a lot of value. And we're just really excited to be able to connect with those farms and butcher shops through this series. So like I said earlier, you can always find our recordings on our YouTube channel, and you can get registered as well at ChopLocalUniversity.com.
So let's talk about marketing a little bit more. What types of things do you feel like have been successful for you over the years to kind of grow to the point where you do have these repeat customers coming back over and over?
Well, I think consistency is the biggest word that I would say and takeaway for anybody that would be looking into doing this or kind of grow their business. As a new business, you gotta establish trust and be consistent to your word. I would say one thing that also separates us is customer service. So I'm accessible. If somebody texts me, call me, getting back to them in a timely manner, being transparent. Hey, sorry, this is not going to be ready till XYZ date, but maybe try this instead. Just being honest about that stuff. And then I would say more so, it's like anything. You start something out, everybody don't really know, and they're like, okay, well, you have to get your name out there. So we kind of built a following with our Facebook page, did Facebook groups, did consistent ads, like, within the Facebook ads, sponsor ads, and then just organically posting regularly, doing life on the farm. There's a lot of great people that are doing that. Some people take the more sharing like stories and stuff like that. We've done a little bit of that. But, I would say just Facebook groups in your local, areas, and just being consistent in doing that. And, don't get too caught up on the likes or the shares or anything of that, because it's kind of more of a, you'll get it all the time. Hey, I seen your stuff 6 months ago. Well, it wasn't maybe the ad that you just had. It's kind of maybe a build up of trust or a build up. So I would say you got to be consistent. And then, right now we're more of like customers asking when we have availability again, versus we're not really marketing as much as we used to. And it's just more based on, the customer service, the fulfillment, and the quality.
So tell me more about the Facebook groups that you've used. Are these local groups, local to Muscoda, or are they Wisconsin groups, or are they some of the national Facebook groups where people are looking for beef for sale?
A lot of the groups are mainly just a local buy, sell, and trade groups. Other groups, it can be national groups. So there's many grass-fed groups, and then beef groups. So just kind of being in quite a bit of those. And then there's some, carnivore diets, some different meat diets I've tried or had customers use. So I'm like, oh, what's that diet? So I join a group and learn about it. Well, then there'll be people that look, in the comments looking for that. So it's just like, if you fit their location and or can get it to their doorstep within what they want, that's been beneficial of kind of more looking at a niche markets of person wants grass fed to their door, shipped to their door, or they want the option go to the farm within a certain area. I think just having those people would say warm cold calls or whatever you want to call it makes it for easier transition getting a customer, and instead of you more or less beating down the door with somebody posting 1,000 times to a group that's irrelevant, or on your page a bunch, and maybe you get some unfollows because over pushy or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, but these people have already expressed some interest in, like you said, they're looking for grass finished beef or grass fed beef, or yeah, yeah. Have you tried the carnivore diet?
Yeah, we did a little bit. There's eggs and certain things, but it goes down a pretty strong rabbit hole of ingredients, even on toppings and all that. So I love my wife, and my wife is a great cook, and so when she comes to make some things and they don't comply, it makes it tough to make two different deals. So it only probably lasted about a 6-week period. So.
Really? That's longer than I would expect. It's pretty intense, I feel like.
A lot of eggs and a lot of meat.
A lot of eggs and a lot of meat. I do agree. We see people on the carnivore diet that are looking to buy a quarter of beef or a half a beef just because they are going through so much meat so quickly. And so, yeah, doesn't surprise me that that's been a good place for you to find some new customers, I guess. What about wholesale? I know at one point you were doing some wholesale ground beef, I think. Is that correct?
We never did ground beef, but we have done beef sticks. So just looking in your mom and pop bar and grills, we've had quite a success there. And then some wineries over the years, and then a distillery. Currently now we have one in customer base in that, and so just basically we've had it in a spirit store before. That was a good client, and yeah, that's kind of we had. As we were growing our business, we did a lot of beef sticks through, I would say, the earlier 2020s, and now it's, we still have some more of the local stores too, and so on. So, but we've had, kind of one of the inhibiting factors is we're growing and stuff on sales and stuff like that. Our ground sales are so strong that it's been hard to have that on hand, and you can't really solicit more beef stick orders if you can't keep up with your regular wholesale customers. So.
Two questions on that. The first one, I guess, is do you feel like doing those beef stick partnerships with the different businesses, did that bring you customers that would buy either other cuts of beef and quarters or halves, or was it really just they'd get the beef sticks at that business and that, you never heard from them again?
I would say it was like marketing. So it's just like a retail space that has your name. We had kind of more of a generic a label, and it had like our logo, but we changed our logo. It's like a SCC, Studnicka Cattle Company. Well, then we started incorporating the name on it. So then, having the name, Studnicka above it and Cattle Command below, have something you can search. Well, then we went on one more thing of we made some printed labels to put on the back of our beef sticks that have all our contact information and location and a little bit about what we're doing. So, I think that helps certainly. It's just, again, it's just brand recognition. It's like anything you want to grow, the more they see you indirectly, then it becomes directly. And so I think that's would be encouraging to people that, sometimes the wholesale, it's a tough business because there's a lot of people trying to sell into retail, and that's the easiest thing that comes to mind when you're a beef farmer. Oh, I'll sell in the local supermarket or convenience store. And there's a lot of people that, if they're doing hundreds of animals, they're going to have a better rate or what have you, or who knows what they're utilizing and stuff. So that's just, I would say the margins are tighter for wholesale to be competitive. But that it's a great way for marketing to grow your brand too.
Especially if those types of places have regular customers who are going to see that over and over and over again. It's not just that they're going to see it one time. When you've worked out those deals in the past, do you sell the beef sticks to the company or to the business, or do you retain ownership of them, or what does that kind of look like?
So the beef sticks, it's just like any other cut at the butcher shop. We have a minimum order amount with the locker, and then we try to have a minimum order with the wholesale person, and then they take possession of them that time.
So the wholesale customer will actually purchase the beef sticks from you, and then if they don't end up selling them, that's their loss, right? You don't like.
They just buy them by the pack, and then they mark them up.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So we give them a wholesale price, and it's like so some of the like the wineries, they used to cut them up like as more of a snack food, like cootery board type of deal. And then our local distillery, English Prairie, they've done like a meat cootery board where you get the pack of cigarette or a pack of beef sticks and cheese and stuff, and then you cut it up and while you're enjoying their spirits. So that's a cool thing. And then we have a bar and grill sportsmen's, they use them for their Bloody Marys or when the kitchen's closed, hey, I'm hungry, here's a pack of beef sticks. So that's kind of they've used them in either capacity. We've had some other bars that they're using them strictly for Bloody Marys and don't sell them by the pack. And then we've had spirits, they sell them by the pack too. So that's how we've done that.
Sometimes when producers want to work with a small business like that, and maybe they want to put a freezer inside the gas station or something like that, then we get questions about what's the best way to do this. Does the gas station purchase the meat? Does the gas station own the freezer? And so that's kind of where I was getting at. But I think it's a lot simpler when it's just beef sticks like that. And so the second question that I had related to what we were just talking about is, you said ground beef, you can't keep it in stock. So what are your best sellers? What cuts sell the best for you?
Well, again, I don't want to say it's a COVID effect or I would say it's probably more the price of current what beef is now. When I first started in 2020, it was like, I think the grass-fed thing, it was kind of like, hey, novelty, I want to try out steaks. And so ground was actually harder for us to move at the time. But now it's like, I think maybe younger families or the so on, they're more curious on where their food's coming from, how it's being produced, and that sort of thing. And then, I would say too is that what people have found with our packaging center beef, it's like in a flat, like 4 by 6 inch container, 1 pound packs. So it's like, it makes perfect, like if you got a family and you want to make spaghetti or tacos, it's like, or hamburgers or whatever, it's pretty convenient. It's firstly, you can take a couple packs out if you have a bigger family, 1 pack for 2 people or whatever. So, and then it's cryovac sealed.
Having it frozen flat like that makes it a lot easier to thaw too, right?
Yeah, thaws out, doesn't take up a lot of space. It's again, you can see on the outside of the package what the meat looks like. So, and I would definitely advise anybody to get the cryovac. Just it lasts longer in the freezer too, and people can see it. So that eye appeal, I think, is big to the customer. I think that's you cover your 10 cents or whatever, give or take extra for that packaging versus paper. Um, also what people found with our ground, I would say more to store bought or I don't know, yeah, store bought. I'll leave it at that. Is that when you cook a pound of our beef in your pan, it's closer to the amount that you started with, where there seems to be a lot more water or shrink factor on some of the more larger store purchased beef. So.
Do you have any idea, or has your locker given you an idea of what the fat to meat ratio, is it like 90% lean or?
Yeah, it's a 90-10. That's what I would say.
So less shrinkage there. Interesting. Okay. So have you guys done farmers markets? I can't remember. I know you've done some local events.
We typically do one every spring. Our town, Muscoda, has a mushroom festival, Morel Mushroom Festival.
I'm still going to come one of these days. I'm going to come up and have some mushrooms.
It's a pretty big deal. I mean, they got morel everything. There's morel burgers, and then also, I guess that's my plug now. Is that we partnered with Meister Cheese, local cheese company, and the award-winning cheese, and their claim to fame is the morel and leek cheese. Well, we ended up getting that where we shred it the day that they're getting ready to make our shred at the butcher shop. They're like, "Hey, Ryan, we need a shred," and I'll be like, tell my wife, "Hey, you're gonna go deliver the cheese." So then we shred it in the cheese plant, and then they take it direct there, and then so we have morel and leek beef sticks. So that was a big hit and a niche for our town. And so yeah, that's that. That's one of the farmers markets. We used to go to like a car show one. There was like a local one, and then just once in a while, yeah, we'd go to some markets, but it was never really a big thing for us. But I think it's worthwhile when you're starting out. Again, that's another thing that to get your name out there, shake hands, get people to know your story, and I think the biggest thing is getting in front of people and shaking hands and get to know people, and then a lot of times they're going to try something based on their interaction with you, and then obviously your quality and what you stand for and how you conduct business is what's going to keep repeating things.
I should have asked this way back at the beginning or had you explain this, but when you're talking about rotating your cattle every day or every 2 days or something like that, people listening are probably like, this guy must have all the time in the world. He works off farm too, but he must just have every evening he goes out and just hangs out with his cattle. You are an incredibly busy person, right? So tell us a little bit more about your family and like all of the other things that you have going on.
I have a daughter, and my wife has a daughter, and then we had a son not quite a year ago. He'll be one coming up in March here, and then we're expecting another boy here in May. So we're busy with that, of course, with the little kids. Both of our daughters are 5 years old in kindergarten, so they're getting involved with different activities and that. And then, I grew up in Muscoda, which is Riverdale High School. And so I do help out with the local youth basketball program, and I coach JV basketball too. So yes, I am a very busy person, and then we also raise and breed quarter horse, AQHA quarter horses. So we just try to have a diversified things and stuff that we love to do.
Yeah, I guess it's a good thing basketball season's in the winter and you don't, like. But
That's the only way it works is because it's like really, we're down to 2 weeks left in the season, and then our calving starts basically, the earliest ones we'll have is the last week of February. So it's just to try to get everything to sync or complement one another. So then, we have calving the next 2 months. Usually we're shooting for Mother's Day is the first day on pasture season, but this year it's different with not having, normally we'd have cover crops where our cropland was. And so now on existing pasture, it's just going to be a different journey of how it'll probably be, going back to the bigger paddocks. So instead of 45, we may start with 10 paddocks and just slowly work around and based on water availability, Sometimes you got to haul water. When you talked about married with the cows, or being with the cows, that is pretty much what we enjoy doing. So, I get done with work at 5:30. It's not uncommon for the first 2 months of summer that getting the paddock set up. And once you have it set up, every rotation after that, it's just a simple 15 minutes of going down to the paddock, open the door, the cows follow. But, definitely setting up the paddocks and temporary fencing and all that. There's a lot of front end work and due diligence there, but it's like beef. We interact with them once a day, where it's not like dairy or some other thing that you have to milk them twice a day or 3 times a day. So there is quite a bit of labor savings there. And then with the winter time, I would say that's another thing. Hey, how you do that or what? So we have round bale feeders, so we're checking cattle, physically walking out to the pens and looking and stuff, obviously, or driving by the fences and stuff. But in the wintertime, we try to focus on, we don't have a TMR or anything of that nature. We feed round bales in round bale feeders. So we're trying to feed where it's enough hay for 2 to 3 days and waiting for them to clean it up and then refeeding. So, it saves out on labor costs that way. And, we just let cows be cows and try to let them, be as natural as they can and assist where we have. And that's kind of mentality we take with calving too. Yes, we bring in heifers, but we have kind of a hard calling program that if they don't fit in this grass-fed program, they move on.
I think that's really important, the genetics piece too, especially with what you're doing and moving them so often, making sure that they are, cooperative and docile, and then of course producing the meat that you want them to. So one last question. What does success mean to you or to Studnicka Cattle Co.?
So I have to go back to my why of doing the direct marketing, and my whole thing is, when you sell your feeder calves, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can creep feed them, you can rotational graze the cows, and that could help you. You could do whatever. You could all these fancy elaborate things. You could have the best name brand genetics. You could be all registered. You could do the best cross, the Baldy cross, if you thought that was the best, or have straight Hereford or anything of that nature. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you went to a livestock yard, you were a price taker. And for me, if we're no longer dairying, for me to see my family sustain for the next generation, for my daughters and now sons, I felt like I had to get in the market where I knew I was going to get on the other end. And that's why I started direct marketing my beef in 2020, and then ensuing on ChopLocal when it started up in 2022. That's kind of the drive home message for me, is that I bet on myself that I feel like my family's great people. I feel like I tried to be true person to people and integrity and all those things. I felt like that resonates with the customer, and in return, they understand that you got to make a living, and just pricing it out on my cost of goods of making a living instead of being a price taker. And yeah, obviously right now feeder prices are tremendous, and we did honestly sell some feeders because it's just like it's unknown if the market drops. But we have a strong prevailing market on the meat side that we can grow with our customers now. And it's a beautiful thing. And so that's what I would say my success is for the next generation can be able to, carry it on another round if they want to, of course.
Yeah. And just like you said, when you came home from college and they were selling the family farm, your goal is to have that as an opportunity for your kids, is that they don't have to maybe go through that, right? So awesome. Well, it's been so good to talk to you, Ryan. I'm glad we finally squeezed this into your busy basketball schedule this year. If anybody wants to learn more about Ryan's operation, you can check out on social media, Facebook, Studnicka Cattle Co. There's also a website. They're located in Muscoda, Wisconsin. And I'm sure Ryan would love to talk to everybody if they have questions about rotational grazing and grass finishing and that type of thing too. So
yeah, just shoot us a message or call, and we'll be happy to help you guys.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Meat Success. We hope this episode gave you fresh insights and inspiration to beef up your meat marketing. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, follow us on social, and share with your fellow farmers and butchers. Have questions or ideas for future podcasts? Reach out to ChopLocalUniversity.com. Until next time, remember, there's more than one recipe for meat success.